We want to use games as much as possible to develop our style of play and to develop our fitness. But sometimes the games don't give us everything. What types of runs should we be doing to develop fitness while not taking away or overloading players based on what they're being exposed to in the games? This video is going to look at 6 different runs you can use to complement different styles of play, different types of games played in training to make sure the players don't get overloaded, are at less risk of overuse injuries, but also getting runs to complement whatever they're doing in those games so they're as fit as possible come championship time. When it comes to doing runs and games and training, we know we want a certain amount of high speed meters, physiological adaptations, neuromuscular loads, whatever it might be, to ensure our players are prepared for whatever comes at them in games, but also ensure we can outwork any oppositions we play against. While it's important to try and get as much as possible from the games, we do know from looking at work, particularly in soccer, that Bielsa, Pep Guardiola, Pochettino, all of their players do extra top-up runs. Not so much in the case of Guardiola, but the players themselves, particularly at Bayern Munich, went and did extra run themselves. Whether that's physical or mental, who knows, but they felt the need to get it in. What's really important when designing these runs is making sure the players aren't overloaded in any particular manner. For example, we know from looking at previous videos or previous works that when players play, say, 4v4 on a 60 by 20 size pitch, they get an awful lot of high speed running meters. If we were to then go and do a lot of tempo runs, or your classic tempo Charlie Francis style runs after that, that's even more load running through their hamstrings. That can be really difficult to recover from and leave players at risk of overuse injuries. On the flip side of that, if we do a lot of small sided games on much smaller pitches, 4v4 say on a 40 by 20 meter pitch, there's a lot of turns, tackles, accelerations. So if it isn't as demanding on the central nervous system, but it's really difficult to recover from, particularly on the knees, the quads, the hips. If we then go and do some repeat sprint stuff, or some shorter based condition with a lot of changes of direction, again, it's going to be a big overload on players that they'll find really difficult to recover from. What we want to do is try and use our games and our runs to complement each other. Whatever they're exposed to in the games, we do something different in the runs, and vice versa. We're going to look at a few different examples of games here now that typically coaches use for both hurling and football, and how we can complement those with what's missing in the games through a specific targeted run, so we're getting players as fit as possible without overloading them in any specific movement pattern. So to start off looking at how we complement our training, I'll do a few like team sessions or typical what you might do on specific nights. So starting off, we look at, say for example, if you train on a Tuesday night, you might do some smaller sided games. 4v4 up to 6v6, like some of the murder ball I would have spoken about in a previous video, and we want to pair that with some long runs. So quick overview of what we're actually going to look at in this video. So it's in around 80 metres by 40 metres, 7v7 including your goalkeepers. You play for 1 to 2 minutes and then look to take like a minute to 90 seconds recovery. So this game is going to have a high neuromuscular load in players. There's going to be a lot of twisting and turning, there'll be a lot of fatigue, muscle breakdown. They will be sore muscularly the next day, particularly around like the quads or what's involved in turning, and a lot of tackles there as well. But there'll be relatively low high speed running just because it's a shorter pitch relative to what you play a normal game on. There are like smaller numbers of players there, so there just isn't a chance to build up the higher speeds or a large volume of that. So how do our runs complement this? We know what's there, and we also are beginning to get a bit of an idea of what's missing. So we look, there's 2 different options here around runs. We're going to look at both of them. So our guiding principles in designing the runs, it's not necessarily what runs should I do, but what do the runs or the extra condition need to include. So obviously we need something a little bit longer, because most of what we do in that game is going to be quite short and turning based. We want more longer stuff, and there's 2 variations of that. We want it generally aerobic in nature, so the game we would have just played there, that's going to give, if you're looking a bit more physiologically, probably more VO2 max benefits, whereas we want more aerobic in nature stuff, so a lower percentage of mass. Or more of a straight line, high speed focus. So if you're doing a lot of shorter stuff with turns, we're not really getting enough of an exposure to your high speed run, which is something people look an awful lot at when it comes to GPS. And you want relatively longer recoveries here, but we'll tailor them to the specific runs. So the first one we're going to look at are 300s is the guiding principle, but it's kind of a minute on, minute off thing, but it's up to you to vary. Now I set these up in a U shape. I just find it easier to keep an eye, give how long it's taken, particularly at the halfway mark, guidance on where they should be hitting, whatever that way. Brief overview. So use the sidelines and an end line. I've cut off a bit of a 45 there just so that there isn't too sharp a turn. You can stagger the players out, you can go off and roll in 10-second groups, whatever. You're aiming for between 95 and 105% of their mass. You've probably done a time trial at some stage, you know them, you know how to group them, whatever that way. So that's looking for between 50 and 65 seconds. And your work to rest ratio is in or around 1:1. So just like for handiness sake, going off your stopwatch, a rolling 2 minutes works well here. And just to give some specific numbers, so the Definition of high-speed run in most GAA-related research is 17 kilometers an hour is the definition, or anything faster is high-speed run. That is the equivalent of a 3 minutes 30 seconds for a 1k, or 3:30 per kilometre pace if you run at that. So if we work that out, that's 4.8 meters per second in terms of mass. So if you look at the upper end of that, 105% of mass multiplied by 60 seconds is 302 meters. So if your group, if you're working specifically off trying to get in high speed run, you're ever so slightly faster here, and you're getting 300 meters of that in a minute, or ever so slightly more. You can look for some players to compete a little bit quicker, maybe 55 seconds, and that based on what their mass is. So they might be running the 3 minute 20 pace for a 1k, or quicker based on what distance you've used for that. And you look for in or around 6 to 8 reps based on how much you've done beforehand, what stage of the year it is, how quickly they're going, everything like that. I like to do them progressive. That means you might start with the first one around 65 seconds, and as you progress through 6 or 7 of them, they're getting ever so slightly quicker as you progress through all those. Our next option then is just your classic tempo runs, taken from Charlie Francis, used a lot in rugby, and they're used an awful lot in GAA now as well. They're a great way to get in high speed run, or very high speed run, and distance brought in. And it's just your straight line run, and we look at take a longer recovery and come back down. They can be mass based. I'll touch on how to do them based off mass, but there's other ways of looking at that too. Overview: straight line high speed run. You're looking for between 115 and 125% of mass based on where the players are at. 15 to 25 seconds of work. I generally go around 20, but if it's 18 to 22, that's okay based on your groupings. 1 to 2 work to rest ratio generally works best. You can go little bit longer with the recoveries. I wouldn't go shorter, because the key here is on high quality of high speed run. You don't want it to turn into the typical 15 on, 15 off mass sessions. You're better off to go a little bit quicker with longer recovery. They take longer to do, but it's just a much higher quality. Again, back to our same 17 kilometers an hour. So 117.5% of mass multiplied by 20 seconds is giving you 113 meters. That's what I set out here. Well, try to based on the pitch size. So you're going 113 meters in 20 seconds for your main group. Take 40 seconds recovery. So again, that's nice. Go off the roll in 1 minute. I'm usually marking on a piece of card or the back of my hand, because I'm brutal at keeping count of those. And if you do 2 sets of 8 reps there, that's 1800 meters of high speed running. For hurling, that's towards the upper limit, particularly if you've just played some games. For football, you might need to tap it out, maybe go 3 sets of 8 or 2 sets of 10 to 12, particularly with the new rules, to get in enough high speed running based on the demands of what it is you're doing. Next example we look at will be, say, on a typical Friday night, you've more players around, you might do some medium to large sided games. So that's taken from, say, 6v6 up to 12v12, based on how many you're at training, whatever that way. So these are going to be your medium games. They'll have more high speed running in them, but we look to complement that with some shorter base runs, and we look at examples of those now. So this is just full end pitch, but we're bringing in the sidelines a bit to encourage a little bit more straight line work. You'll get your volumes of high speed run. I have 2 dotted lines in there just to say, like, you might use different constraints around puck outs or kick outs. Say you want to force all your kick outs long, so they have to land in that zone. You have 2 designated midfielders and other players have to get in around on breaks. Or you might say all your puck outs have to go short and then work it. Whatever, it's up to you to put those constraints in. I'm just looking at pitch size. Overview of this. So you're looking full length or close to with narrower sidelines. 11 here. Probably a little bit small, might drive the high speed run up a bit too much, but adjust it as you like. Play for 4 to 6 minutes, so you might get 3 rounds of 6 minutes here. You'll get a good bit of work in there. There will generally be a lot of high speed running in a game such as this, a high aerobic load, because you will be moving a lot. There's going to be a lower neuromuscular load, because there just won't be now. Some of your inside forwards will naturally our backs will naturally just have a bit more. But there's not going to be as much twist and turn in a game such as this. So because there's less turns, there's less load on the quads, the knees, whatever that way. So again, a few guiding principles on how do we actually complement that, or what do we want to use to help guide our thinking in designing runs for it. So we want to complement this with more repeated sprint-based stuff or more turns. They can be faster and shorter, but with your longer recovery, because your heart rate will be kept fairly steadily high in the previous game, so you can have more up-down nature in these runs. or just go for some really low aerobic work. You're probably looking at 75 to 85% max heart rate held for the majority of that previous game. So you might want to bring it back down to 60 to 70% of heart rate and just try and keep that, wave it up and down a little bit as we look at here. So these are either going to be with a lower percentage of mass or just really hard with short recovery. So 2 samples we look at here. The first one will be a repeat sprintability grade. I don't use this a huge amount, but I do like to dip it in maybe once every 4 weeks, 6 weeks. So there are different variations of 30 meter shuttles, and you're aiming to complete the 30 meters in about 6 seconds. Some will do a bit quicker with about 24 seconds recovery, and that's just to work off a rolling 30-second clock. You'll do 3 to 4 reps on each of the shuttles, and we'll look at what those are in a second. And these are just examples. You can vary these around based on your own levels of creativity. But the 30 seconds rolling works quite well. And then a minute between sets. So you might complete 3 to 4 of one shuttle, like every 30 seconds, take a full minute's recovery, and then move on to the next one. 3 to 4 sets, so work around 4 in each one. Mass won't really be relevant here. This is more based off just all out effort for each one. And you're looking to keep an eye on the output. Like if you notice that some players were able to complete in 6 and it's now taking them 7, 7.5, you would look to either massively increase the recovery or just pull it and say enough work done this, because you're not getting the benefit. So the first one will just be straight out. So like I said, 30 meters of work, 50 meters out, 50 meters back, long recovery. Next one is to bring in the turns. So 10 meters, 10 meters, 10 meters in a U, a C, an N, whatever name you want to give to that shape there. 30 meters straight to get a little bit of straight line stuff, and then something resembling a 5, 10, 5, just going longer for that. So you're starting in the middle, going this way, all the way over here, back to the middle. Again, just to dip in more turns or change the direction. So it's a mixture of repeat sprintability and some change of direction stuff. And this is to complement a game that has minimal turns in it. I definitely wouldn't do this paired with some smaller sided games, because it's just way too much neuromuscular load, and some players will have a lot of knee issues and cranky muscles and joints for a few days after this one. Our second option then is looking back at the old mass-based paper from Dan Baker. It's just a slightly modified variation of the grids method that would have been used before. So trying to keep them as aerobic in nature as possible. I'm saying here 100% to 50% of mass. I know the old ones would have been 170. I actually find players find it hard to maintain a lower heart rate for these. That's why I drop it to 50, or sometimes even the main work bit go off 95-ish%. So it's 15 seconds of work, 15 seconds of active recovery. But the active recovery is still an element of work to it. To use our calculation from earlier, or that player looking at high speed running, so we'll go with our mass at 4.8, 100% of mass by 15 seconds is 72 meters, and then your recovery, which is just half that, is 36 meters. And you look for so you'll do that in a 4-minute block, so it'll be 15, 15 and continuously for 4 minutes, and that will get 8 reps in, and you do 2 to 3 sets of 4 minutes based on time, how much you've done before, etc. And that's just going to look like you have a 72 meter run here, a 36 meter run, a 72 meter run, and a 36 meter run. And you'll find it'll take about 3 reps for players to figure out the pacing of it. Logistically, you don't want too many players in groups for this, because they just bunch up too much to corners. You'll put them in smaller groups dotted around the different corners that are going at one particular time. And if you're adjusting them based on fitness levels of players, and you might want to move in the lines on one, and again stagger them out so you don't have a bunch of players come to one corner at the same time. This is a little bit more pre-season focused, where you might be getting some high speed meters in your game, and then you're looking to complement that with a bit more aerobic volume that just helps build what we'll call base fitness, I suppose, for to draw an athletics term. When it comes into, say, Sunday morning or Saturday evening, when you have bigger numbers around, you do your typical full-sided games, or as close to full-sided as you possibly can. There will be differences in demands here, because your inside players, full forward, full backline players, will probably have more accelerations, decelerations, turns, whereas your middle-eight players probably have more high-speed run. And that's obviously going to be impacted a bit by the style of play of your team. So we'll probably just look at a mixed or a variety of runs for this, as opposed to targeting any one thing specifically. Here's just a layout. Typical 15 on 15, a few general overview bits of that. So full length, 15 to 15. I'll usually time this 3 by 10 minutes or 4 by 8 minutes. It allows you to get in higher quality of decent work, with some breaks there to dip in bits of feedback, bits of discussion, refine bits, whatever. You might put some conditions or constraints on this based on what it is you're trying to develop. And you'll have a classic mixture of aerobic work, high speed running, neuromuscular load, everything, just normal demands of a game, maybe a slightly higher tempo based on the conditions you put in. And we'll look to do some mixed runs of variety to complement this. So the first thing we'll look at will be our tempo runs that we would have looked at previously, but with some mixed change of direction bits in there. So you're looking at between 115 and 125% of mass. All are in or around 100 meters worth of work. That's just to keep a level of consistency there, and you can slightly vary the work time and the recovery time around that. So we'll still work off our 17 kilometers an hour as high speed running metric from before, or 3:30 for a kilometer run. So that's a mass of 4.8 meters per second. If you look at 120% of mass, multiplied by 17 seconds, that's going to give you 98 meters worth of work. And that's what all these runs I've done out here are based on, 98 meters or ever so slightly less based on the amount of turns that go in. So 1:2-ish work to rest ratio. I'll work off a 60-second rolling clock for this. Or maybe every 30 seconds someone will go up, but they'll be working in pairs. You might have 3 in one group, 3 in the next. So as one group of theirs completed, the next group is going a few seconds later. It's just to give off an effect that there are more people working as opposed to having longer recovery periods, because sometimes the manager might be looking at it being like, why are there so many lads standing around here for 40 seconds when they're only working for 17? Whereas if half are working, half are recovering, it just gives an effect that there's more being done. This is a mixture of straight line and some turns. If you do 3 sets of 4 reps, you get about 1200 meters. 4 sets of 4 reps, about 1600 meters of high speed running, which is decent volume. You can bulk it out more, do more at each station based on what your targets are. But bear in mind, you've played hopefully 30 to 40 minutes of ever so slightly higher than normal game intent. So our first run there will be 98 meters straight line in 17 seconds. Then you're going to have one brought in with a turn. So this will be half a 98. Now you could go half to a full metre shorter, just incorporate for a turn. So that's what, 49 metres, maybe go 48, 48.5. Straight line 98 metres again, and then you're going to look to put double the amount of turns in. And the players, they'll do 4 or 5 reps of each run. So you'll do 4 or 5 with the red one, maybe take a full minute's break, same with the blue, same with the yellow, same with the green. Work for 17 seconds, recover for 43, 4 to 5 times, and the longer recovery in between each one then. Last one then, won't use this too often, but I find it really good for a higher aerobic stimulus, is a broken bronco. So where you take a bronco and break it down to smaller parts. So you look up around 110% of mass, it'll be similar-ish volume to our 300s from earlier. So 6 reps of 240 meters with turns. So if we work that out, 105% of mass by 55 seconds is 252 meters. So instead of 240, add in the turns, you're looking to hit it in 55 or less there. A rolling 2 minute works well here. Again, put them in pairs, one person goes, one person doesn't. Every minute you're blowing the whistle on that. It's a mixture of straight line and some turns, and 6 reps of this will get you 1440 meters, which is decent volume. Can be nicely paired in with what you do game based. And like, you probably know what a bronco is. Out 20 and back, out 40 and back, out 60 and back. I would suggest that if you are grouping players based off fitness, so some players with lower mass wouldn't be able to complete this in the same time. Instead of getting them to do the exact same distance, I'd get them to do the 40 and the 20 the same, but I'd pull back the 60 metre on to maybe 52, 50 metres, so that they're finishing in or around the same time, working relatively at the same pace, but still getting fairly close to the same recovery as everyone else. That's just looking at 6 different running sessions you can use to complement whatever games you're using in training. It's not so much about the specific runs, but using the guiding principles of complementing the types of output players are getting in the games to help then design your runs so they're not getting an overload of any one particular stimulus. It's important we try and develop a few different types of fitness, both running, strength, speed and power, while working alongside our games. So if you found this video useful, you can check this one up here about how to incorporate more strength-based work alongside a busy schedule of games so you're getting as fit, as strong, as resilient as possible while still playing your sport.